Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into what is basically a true crime story. But our villains? They aren't people. They're invisible saboteurs lurking right inside your thermal power generation systems. We're talking about microscopic chemical imbalances, specifically inside your heat recovery steam generator, or HRSG. It's fascinating and, honestly, a little terrifying to see how the absolute smallest atomic elements can wage an all-out war on massive steel structures.
So here's the million-dollar, or maybe I should say multi-million-dollar question. How does a single microscopic ion manage to bring down a massive turbine? I mean, it sounds kind of impossible, right? But the reality is that poor water and steam chemistry directly leads to level 3 or level 4 plant incidents. We're talking forced outages, massive equipment destruction, and some really severe safety hazards. Throughout this explainer, we're going to see exactly how steam and water contamination with cations and anions causes catastrophic types of corrosion.
All right, let's run through the agenda real quick. First up, we'll meet our invisible saboteurs. Then, we'll break down cations and how they cause scaling and deposits, followed by anions and their acidic attacks. After that, we'll look at the 4 specific types of corrosion they trigger. And finally, we'll tie it all back to the real-world operational consequences.
Section 1. The Invisible Saboteur. Let's set the stage for this microscopic battlefield.
Okay, so our contaminants basically split into 2 distinct profiles. On one side, we have cations. These are your positively charged ions. Think of them as the builders, but trust me, not in a good way. They build hard-scale and these sticky insulating deposits right on your high-temperature surfaces. On the flip side, we have anions. These are negatively charged, and they are the attackers. They create highly localized acidic conditions that literally eat away at the metal. We're talking severe pitting and cracking. Together, these 2 just absolutely tag-team your system, accelerating boiler corrosion and ruining turbine blades.
Moving right along to Section 2, cations, scaling, and deposits. Let's take a closer look at these specific cation villains. First up is sodium. This guy often sneaks in from seawater condenser leaks. Once inside, it combines with other elements to form these incredibly sticky, corrosive, caustic deposits right on the turbine blades. Next, you've got calcium and magnesium. If your raw water treatment plant has a hardness breakthrough, these ions rush in and literally bake into this hard, glass-like scale on your heat transfer surfaces. And then there's iron and copper. These typically show up from general piping corrosion. They clump together in the high-pressure evaporators and form this dense crud. That crud acts like an insulator on the tubes, causing localized overheating until eventually the tube bursts.
Section 3. Anions and the acidic attack. Now, just like our cations, the anions have their own specific modes of destruction. First up, chloride. Usually sourced from brackish cooling water leaks, chloride is just ruthless. It causes severe pitting and stress corrosion cracking, especially if you're dealing with stainless steel. Then we have sulfate. Often sneaking in from raw makeup water or leaking ion exchangers, sulfate aggressively accelerates acidic attacks right underneath those deposits the cations just finished building. Finally, carbonates and carbon dioxide. When air leaks into the condenser, CO2 gets into the water, drops the pH in the early condensates, and promotes rapid flow-accelerated corrosion. It's a real mess.
When you actually map all this theory out into a real-world operational chart, it's wild to see. You've got these exact chemical formulas, the hardness elements, the CO2, the chlorides we just talked about, and they map directly to immense plant difficulties. Everything from foaming and embrittlement to heavy scaling and corrosion. It really highlights the incredibly complex mechanical and chemical treatments you have to run just to keep these tiny impurities at bay. It is a constant, high-stakes balancing act for sure.
Section 4. 4 types of corrosion.
So how exactly does this subatomic chemistry scale up to massive physical destruction in an HRSG? Well, our first major failure mechanism is flow-accelerated corrosion, or FAC. Over time, your steel pipes build up this nice protective oxide layer called magnetite. But in areas with high-velocity turbulent water, like your low-pressure economizers and elbows, the sheer physical force of the water combined with the low pH from those carbon dioxide anions literally strips that protective layer away as fast as it can form. The pipe just keeps thinning out from the inside until it violently ruptures. Not good.
Next up is acid dew point corrosion. Now this one attacks from the outside, the gas side of the tubes. During startup, or if you're running at low loads, the metal temperatures in those cold end headers can actually drop below the dew point. When that happens, exhaust gases like sulfur trioxide mix with condensed water vapor and form highly aggressive liquid acids right on the cold metal. It basically just melts the steel away.
Then we have under-deposit corrosion, or UDC. Remember those cations we talked about building all that scale and crud? Well, that scale isn't completely solid. It's actually porous. Water seeps right underneath it. As that water boils off against the super hot tube wall, the aggressive chemicals left behind, like sodium hydroxide, concentrate to extreme levels inside those tiny pockets. They end up eating a deep gouge right through your high-heat flux evaporator tubes. It's literally an acidic attack hiding under a chemical blanket.
The fourth type is stress corrosion cracking. This happens when a metal component is under intense mechanical tensile stress, think of a thick steam drum or a welded tube joint, and is simultaneously exposed to a corrosive environment. Our anion villain, chloride, is absolutely notorious for this. The chemical attack finds the microscopic stress fractures in the metal and drives them deep, eventually causing the metal to just crack wide open under the pressure.
Section 5. Real-world operational consequences.
When these microscopic saboteurs actually win, the results are catastrophic. If you look at operational incident categories, a major equipment failure like an HRSG tube leak is absolutely not a minor hiccup. It immediately triggers a level 3 incident. We're talking a forced outage and significant equipment damage. And if the failure is violent enough, it can easily escalate to a level 4 critical incident, which means a multi-unit plant shutdown, major environmental harm, or, tragically, even a fatality.
And look, fixing a tube leak is not like changing a tire. The prep work required just to safely open a manhole and visually inspect a leak is staggering. First, you have to shut down the gas turbine. Then, you mechanically isolate the massive diverter damper. You have to sit around and wait for these massive steel drums to cool below 50 degrees Celsius. You've got to execute a locked and tagged double block and bleed on the high-pressure steam outlets. And on top of all that, you have to run extensive ventilation and clear a confined space permit. It takes hours, sometimes literally days, just to make the area safe enough to even enter.
Why all those extreme steps? Because the hazards are off the charts. Personnel are facing the very real risk of asphyxiation in oxygen-depleted dead spaces. They're dealing with residual high temperatures, the risk of massive stored energy releasing as high-pressure steam, and the danger of entrapment in these dark, highly congested structures. So the ultimate safety measure for the personnel working in your plant isn't just handing them a good harness, it's maintaining pristine water chemistry so they never have to crawl into a broken HRSG in the first place. Which brings us to our final thought for today. We've traced the entire path, from a single microscopic ion of sodium or chloride through the silent accumulation of scale and acid right up to catastrophic pipe ruptures and some seriously harrowing confined space repair jobs. So you have to ask yourself, is your water treatment program genuinely protecting your plant at the atomic level? Or is it just masking a chemical time bomb waiting to go off? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. And as always, stay curious.